Before we step into today's story, take a quiet second for yourself. And if you're someone who understands that the loudest emotions are often the ones no one hears, go ahead and subscribe. This channel is for the stories that don't just pass through you. They stay. Some moments don't really end. They don't fade the way people promise they will. They don't soften with time the way you hope. Instead, they settle somewhere deep inside you, quiet, unmoving, but always there. Like a weight you learn to carry so well that others forget it exists. I used to believe grief was the heaviest thing a person could hold. I was wrong. Grief isn't just heavy. It's revealing. It strips things down. It exposes what was hidden, what was avoided, what was never said out loud. And sometimes, it shows you truths you wish had stayed buried. When my mother died, it didn't feel real at first. People say things like, "She passed peacefully," as if that's supposed to comfort you. As if the manner of someone's death somehow softens the impact of their absence. But nothing about what came after felt peaceful. The morning I found her is something my mind replays in fragments. Not as a full memory. Not like a scene in a movie. Just pieces. The television was still on. A nature documentary. Soft sounds, waves rolling onto a shore, birds calling in the distance. Life continuing somewhere far away, untouched. Unaware that in our house, everything had stopped. That contrast stayed with me. It still does. Because that's what loss feels like sometimes, the world continuing, indifferent, while yours quietly collapses in on itself. The house changed immediately. Not physically. Everything was still there, her shoes by the door. Her favorite mug in the sink, with a faint coffee ring still clinging to the inside. A sweater draped over the back of a chair. But the space felt different. Hollow. Like something essential had been removed, and nothing could replace it. Even the air felt colder. And quieter. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears until you almost wish for noise, any noise, just to break it. The funeral came and went like a blur. Small. Reserved. Almost distant. People spoke in hushed tones, as if raising their voices might somehow disturb something sacred or fragile. My brother, Jaden, didn't cry. Not once. He just stood there, staring at the ground, as if looking up might be too much. As if the sky itself might collapse if he allowed himself to feel what was happening. I didn't know how to reach him. I still don't know if I ever really did. And my father. He stood there like stone. Still. Silent. Unmoving. At the time, I thought that might comfort me. That his steadiness might give me something to hold on to. But it didn't. Because it didn't feel like strength. It felt like absence. Growing up, my father was never cruel. He wasn't harsh or angry, he was just distant. The kind of man who worked late, came home tired, ate in silence, and disappeared into his thoughts even when he was sitting right beside you. My mother used to explain it away. He's tired, she'd say gently. He just has a lot on his mind. And maybe that was true. But after she was gone, that distance didn't just remain. It changed. At first, I told myself it was grief. Of course it was. We were all grieving. But something about it felt different. Subtle at first. Almost unappeasable. The house became unbearably quiet, not just silent but empty in a way that felt unnatural. Her presence had been everywhere before. In the scent of lavender that lingered in the hallway. In the sound of her humming while making coffee. In the small, ordinary movements that made a house feel like a home. After she was gone, those things didn't just disappear. They echoed. And sometimes, the echo felt louder than the original sound. I started wearing her sweaters. Not for warmth. But for closeness. They still smelled like her lavender and coffee, a combination I never realized I would one day miss so much. It was the only thing that made the house feel even slightly familiar. One night, around 2 in the morning, I went downstairs to get some water. I couldn't sleep. Sleep felt impossible back then. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind filled the silence with thoughts I didn't want to face. When I reached the kitchen, I realized I wasn't alone. My father was already there. Sitting in the dark. No lights on. Just the faint glow of moonlight filtering through the blinds, casting thin shadows across the floor. He didn't look at me at first. Just sat there, still, as if he had been there for a long time. I keep expecting her to walk in, he said quietly. His voice sounded different. Not cold. Not warm. Just distant. Me too, I whispered. He nodded slowly. She was the heart of this house, he added after a moment. Now everything feels different. There was nothing strange about his words. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing alarming, but the silence that followed. It felt heavy. As if something unspoken was growing in the space between us. Something neither of us knew how to name. Or maybe something only one of us understood. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. Small things. The kind you can easily dismiss if you want to. The kind you tell yourself you're imagining. But they kept happening. And slowly, they became harder to ignore. He watched me more closely. Not in an obvious way. But enough that I felt it. Especially when I wore her sweaters. He lingered in doorways longer than usual, as if he had something to say but never quite said it. He asked me questions. Not casual ones. Not the kind you ask just to make conversation. But deeper. More intense. As if he was searching for something. In me. In my answers. In my reactions. I told myself it was grief. People change when they lose someone. They become quieter. Stranger. Harder to read. That's normal. Isn't it? But somewhere deep inside me, there was a quiet voice. A feeling. Something instinctive. And it kept whispering the same thing. This isn't just grief. But I didn't have the courage to name what it might be. Not yet. Then came Sunday. The kind of slow, heavy afternoon where time feels like it's dragging itself forward. I decided to clean out my mother's closet. Not because I was ready. I wasn't. But because the silence had become unbearable. I needed something to do. Something to focus on. Something that felt like movement even if it was painful. As I folded her scarves, placed her clothes into boxes, I felt like I was erasing her piece by piece. Like every item I touched was a memory being packed away. And I wasn't sure if I was preserving her. Or losing her all over again. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Measured. I turned around. My father was standing in the doorway. Holding a small cardboard box. I found this in the attic, he said softly. He walked in and placed it gently on the bed. I looked inside. Old photographs. Letters. Memories from a time I had never seen. My mother laughing. My father smiling, really smiling. Not the distant version of him I had grown up with. But someone lighter. Warmer. Almost unrecognizable. I used to write to her, he said quietly. When I was deployed. She kept everything. There was something in his voice. Not quite sadness. Not quite nostalgia. Something searching. And then he looked at me. Not past me. Not through me. But directly at me. As if he was waiting. For something. For me to understand something I didn't yet see. I didn't realize it then. But that was the moment everything began to change. Because what was inside that box? It wasn't just memories. It was truth. And the truth has a way of reshaping everything you thought you knew. The box sat between us. Heavier than it should have been. I hesitated before touching anything. Because somehow, I knew, once I started looking, I wouldn't be able to stop. These were ours, he said. Before everything changed. I nodded. But I didn't ask what he meant. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Still. I reached for a letter. The envelope was yellowed with age. My mother's handwriting covered the front soft, looping, familiar. There was a faint lipstick mark sealing it. A kiss from a time long before I existed. For a moment, it felt like she was there. Watching. Listening. Waiting. Did you read these? I asked. He hesitated. Sometimes, he admitted. It's the only way I feel close to her. His hands were shaking slightly. Not from age. From something else. Something deeper. I opened another letter. And as I read, I realized something. These weren't just love letters. They were layered. Complicated. They spoke of choices. Of doubts. Of things left unsaid. And suddenly, it hit me. My mother hadn't just left behind grief. She had left behind questions. And I wasn't sure I was ready for the answers. I looked at him. Why are you showing me this now? He didn't respond right away. Just ran a hand over his face, exhaling slowly. Because you deserve to know, he said finally. There are things I couldn't tell you before. Things I thought would protect you. He paused. But protecting you meant hiding the truth. And now, I can't hide anymore. Something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about loss anymore. This was about something deeper. Something that had been buried for years. I don't know if I'm ready, I whispered. But even as I said it, I kept reading. Because some part of me needed to know. Needed to understand. And with every letter, every photograph, every piece of the past, I began to see my family differently. Not perfect. Not simple. But human, flawed, complicated, and tangled in ways I had never imagined. That's when I understood something important. Grief doesn't just make you sad. Grief makes you see. And sometimes, seeing is the hardest part of all. I looked at my father again. Really looked. Not as the distant man I had always known. But as someone with a past. With secrets. With regrets. I need to know everything, I said. Everything you never told me. He nodded slowly. You will. And in that moment, I realized something I wasn't prepared for. The truth doesn't just hurt. Sometimes, it changes you, forever. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something you couldn't quite explain, subscribe for more stories like this. The kind that don't just end when the video does.